The global crisis, the solution. Namaste. In our second episode, we take a look at the core of the current global crisis and a potential solution. Guide and discussion is consultant Dr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So how can we look deeper down to the roots at the current global crisis?
There are many ways of looking at the world at any given point in time. The current state into which the world is, last time we talked about it, it is the lost world. It is a world without an anchor in terms of belief or an overarching philosophy. It looks more and more like a turbulent world, but a more lethal form of the turbulent world that existed just before World War I. And minus the belief of communism. So the demise of ideologies has contributed in a strong way to the world being the lost world. And there are many ways of looking at it. One way to look at it is to think in terms of events, do an event-based analysis. For example, you can take a look at the Russia-Ukraine war and do an analysis of it only within the framework of that event. You look only at the event. Who are the participants? What are the forces at work? What is the balance of power? What are the strategies possible? What alliances can work out and how it will shape the two countries and the rest of the world. That would be an event-based analysis. Second way to analyze the world is to look at it and do a pattern-based analysis. That what is happening in Ukraine can be seen as one more instance of a pattern repeating itself. And we see the same regime change operation tried out in Syria, in Iraq, in Ukraine, and now in Bangladesh, and India is next on the target. So we can analyze this event as a part of a pattern of the US deep state, which rolls out the regime change operations across the world. We saw it in the Arab Spring. We saw it in what happened in Iraq. We saw it partly in Maldives. And now we are seeing it in Pakistan, slowly emerging. So we can see it as a part of a larger pattern. And this would be a second kind of analysis, slightly larger in framework, more wide than the first one. Third way to look at it is to look at the event in an historical framework. That are we looking at finally demise of Russia as a power, or are we looking at demise of USA as a power? Are we looking at the ending or the beginning of the end of a unipolar world and a truly multipolar world emerging? Do empires fall like this? And this brings us into a historical analysis. There is a very good book, The Rise and Fall of Political Empires. I think by John Kennan, if I'm not mistaken. That range of scholarly diplomats is no longer there. We miss the John Kennan and the J.K. Galbraith, the scholarly diplomats. But one of the books that Kennan, I think, wrote was The Rise and Fall of Political Empires. And he analyzes the reasons why empires are built and the empires fall. And when we look at it in that larger historical framework, and we apply it to United States, and we apply it to China, and we apply it to Europe and India, what kind of historical analysis do we get? Are we looking at the end of modernity, the end of the modern era, which means the end of supremacy of Europe and USA? So if that is so, then we will have a larger framework of analyzing the current situation. And then we can do a historico-spiritual analysis, where the Hindu spirituality tells us that you have eras which succeed one after the other, and they are an outcome of a larger spiritual design. So then we would be looking at the era of the cavemen, era of the tribes. So the caveman era, the tribal man era, the classical religious society era, the individual era, the mystical and the spiritual era. And there, the focus would be less on who rules, and the focus would be more on how people live. And that would be a very different form of analyzing the current situation. So we have all these approaches to look at the world, and of course you can have a combination of all of them. The difficulty is the kind of intellectuals or spiritual masters who are both intellectually capable and spiritually capable. That breed of philosophers is no longer there. And therefore, we are not having that kind of a vision. Hegel used to say, one of the greatest things to do is to see the present with the eyes of history. That you don't look at present as present, but you look at it situated in the historical flow. And not everything that is past will have an effect, but many of the things will have an effect. And therefore, Gadamer brings out a very important concept. He says there is history, and with reference to an event, there is an effective history.
Effective.
That of everything that has happened in history, only a few things are influencing the present event we are focusing on. And for that event, that is the effective history. So everything in history may not be relevant for that event, but some things are. That some things constitute the effective history for that event. So he calls upon the analysis of an event with a reference to and in the continuation of the effective history. Now, Sri Aurobindo in India did that kind of analysis. And he talked about the different phases of human society in evolution. Unfortunately, that quality of people in philosophical terms is no longer there. And therefore, what we have is actually an event-based analysis, because this is the best that media can do. The popular media, the public discourse limits itself to an event-based analysis. If you read more academic journals in political science or history, you may get more of a pattern-based analysis. But very few would have a philosopher's eye to really look at the event with the eyes of history and in the philosophico-spiritual context. One of the difficulties in this area is we have not invested the best of our minds and best of our resources to do this kind of an integrated thinking and evolve an comprehensive vision. And because we have not invested and capable individuals have not come up, what we have is a billion facts out of which we cannot make a coherent vision for ourselves. And that is one of the difficulties, that the scarcity of the philosopher is leading to the scarcity of a holistic vision. And this is where we are positioned at present, that the world is awaiting a vision. So envisioning a vision which is relevant to the present in the light of the past, in the light of the probable future. That is something world is waiting, not yet grappling with, but waiting. So this is one of the ways of looking at the current global crisis. It's a crisis of a philosophical vision.
So when we say it's a lack of a vision, how is this vision developed? What are these elements which create the vision?
It's a good question. If we look at the ways or the foundations of most of the comprehensive visions we have had, there were a few elements which provided the foundation. For a long time, religion provided the foundation. That how should a man be, how should a society be, how should a country be, how should the world be? These questions were answered by religion. And then, with the advent of modernity and the industrial era, people expected science to answer these questions. Unfortunately, science could not satisfactorily answer these questions. It did provide some vision to some people because they were comprehensive enough. So science failed, and then the philosophical ideologies came. So we had ideologies of capitalism, of communism, of feminism, of naturalism. All the isms came in, each trying to provide a comprehensive vision of the world. And all of them in the course of the last century have failed. So the second way of looking at creating a vision was based upon ideology. So the first was founded on religion, second was founded on science, third on ideology, fourth on a set of values. That we may not have a vision which starts from the origin of the universe and goes to the end of the universe, which would be the vision where science, where religion comes. Religion would provide that kind of a vision, or philosophy would provide that kind of a vision. So religion can provide that kind of a vision, philosophy can provide. Science cannot provide except to leave out the origin and the purpose. It can provide the rest of it to some degree of probability. And then we have something which is based on a set of values, where we say that we don't have an epic vision which starts from the origin and goes to the end and the purpose, but we may have a temporal vision good enough for a century or two. And that kind of a vision was provided by the French Revolution, which talked about the three core values of liberty, equality, and fraternity. So then that can be a set of values, can be a foundation for a vision. The difficulty is how do you translate those into specifics? And is it adequate for a man to have contentment in his heart based upon such a partial vision? Because no doubt it's a partial vision. It's not an epic vision. And last is, you can have a vision of the world just based upon self-interest and power, which is what we are seeing today. And that's a very difficult world. And if we are not able to have a comprehensive vision, which is based upon any other criteria, the default is then self-interest and power. This fills up the vacuum. And that is a very difficult world which we are seeing today. A constellation based upon self-interest and power, highly unpredictable and highly fatal. It's also a kind of a wasteland of values, what T.S. Eliot used to call the wasteland. A barren land without human values or without good goals for humanity. It is more of a very mechanical, hedonistic version of the man that is at the center of this world based upon power and self-interest. And it's a very brutal, very selfish and a valueless world. And these are the ways vision can be developed. Or the ideal, of course, is to have a theory of everything and to develop a vision from it, which is far ahead in future that we cannot do at present. But one of the things that can be done is to combine elements of this and have a holistic philosophical vision that can be created. So if we combine all these elements, combine a few more insights and use creativity, we can create a vision for the present world and provide a direction to the lost world.
The discussion itself seems emerging into a new vision. I believe you have created a vision on these lines. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. One answer to the present question of the world, the search of a holistic vision, can be answered in this way. One option can be what I call holistic sustainable pluralism, HSP. And this comprehensive vision stands on 5 elements, 5 pillars. It's like a bridge on 5 pillars. The first is of spiritual pluralism, which means in the philosophical conceptualization of man, society, country, and the world, you don't have economics at the center as it is at present. You don't have power at the center as it used to be before 200 years. What you have is the spirituality at the core. And there is pluralism there. The pluralism is the freedom to believe or not to believe, and if to believe whatever I want to believe. So that is the pluralism, and this is the only way out of the Abrahamical thinking. Because the entire Western civilization is based upon the Abrahamical thinking. All the isms that come from there follow this binary of my way or the highway. There is no balance, no moderation, no synthesis. It is this way or the other way. So the first is to have spiritual pluralism. This is in direct contest with all the 3 Abrahamical religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, because all of them insist on the finality of what they say. So the first is spiritual pluralism. The second is cultural pluralism, where we don't get into a binary of either the merit system or a free for all. We get into a multiple format of society where individuals can choose the format they want to go in, and each format has its own do's and don'ts, and they together get into some sort of synergy to ensure the sustainability of the race. So that is an optimization of the needs of sustainability, of reasonableness, of law and order, and of individual variations. The third has to do with social capitalism, which is neither the heartless capitalism nor the heartless communism, but it's a midway. And we can list out what should be the characteristics of each of these pillars. For example, in social capitalism, we can list out that no person should own more than 51% of any company. At least 40% of any company should be owned by more than 1,000 people. No person should hold more than 5% in more than 5 companies. 5%, let us say, of the profit should be distributed among the employees of the company, or the CSR beneficiaries and employees, whatever way you can put it. But this heartless centralization and heartless inequality, that can be addressed. So social capitalism is one part of it. True democracy, which now has become more like a farce, it's more of an elitocracy. And the elites are completely cut off from the masses. And in later, we call it the rule of majority, but actually the majority has been completely discarded from the system. It's just a token participation. So that is fourth. And we can list out what should be the features of true democracy, what needs to be done. And the fifth is holistic healing, where we get out of the reductionist view of well-being, of happiness, of health. We break free of the cage of the allopathy and the drug-making multinationals. And we bring in mystical healing, psychological healing, traditional healing, herbal healing, energy healing, all sorts of things. Evaluate them scientifically. And based upon the scientific studies, create a framework of holistic healing. And make it accessible to everyone and not create a low volume, high margin business that it has become. So these 5 pillars are where we can list out what can be the feature, what can be the points under each of the pillar, and we will have a collection, a basket of 25-30 points, which can be used to create a vision for the individual, for society, for country, and for the world. And this can provide a comprehensive framework to create a vision for a few decades. After which, whatever the situation emerges, those who are there will review it and create a vision for themselves. For ourselves, given our situation, the best that we can do with least controversy seems to be this. So this can be one framework, and obviously it will develop as people debate. It will customize to various contexts, but it can be a good point to start the discussion. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. This can be that conceptual, philosophical step to start off creating a vision for the world.
So will it not distort and degrade like all ideologies of the past?
It will. There is no ideology that is permanent, which will fit for all times to come. There is no project, no vision which will endure forever. But the question is it not relevant to the present? The answer is, it seems yes. 2, over a period of time, will it distort? Yes, it will. Everything distorts. It is like, will a law be abused? Of course, every law is abused 1 to 3% of the times. Does that mean we should not create laws? No. Same is here. Will it not get distorted over a period of time? It will. Will it not degrade? It will. Will it not be used for purposes not intended? It will. But put all of that together, discount it. On the whole, is it not promoting the greater general good? It is. On the whole, is it a loss-making business or a profit-making business? It's an immensely profit-making business. 2, consider the alternative. The alternative is, we can say, the world is too complex, we don't understand much of it, and therefore let us be humble and not create a vision. Now, what is the cost of no ideology? The cost of no ideology is very high compared to the cost of an imperfect ideology. So, when we look at it, the net profit of this ideology will be far more than the cost of this ideology. Second element, then this philosophical vision that I am referring to, certain things are built in. For example, pluralism, optimization, contextuality. This will provide a dynamism in the model. And that will prevent any fanaticism or rigidity or down the hill without the brake kind of a movement of the ideology. What we have to probably look at is we will have to be on guard against excess of pluralism in this approach. Because excess of pluralism can be taken to the absurdity of absolute relativism and no values. And that is where optimization and reasonableness is very important. Optimization, reasonableness, sustainability. These are very important. So these are safeguards against the excess of pluralism. One thing, excess of pluralism, even if it comes to its worst, is easier to handle than the excess of singularism. So I think it's worth to go ahead with this vision.
So how do you envision the developmental stages to this vision itself, if at all it takes off?
Two parts, the conceptual and the implementation. The conceptual part will start first with the global debate. And it's very easy because the global woke debate is already on and it's a cultural debate. And this fits in very well in that flow of debate. So first, we will have to put it across to people. Second, those who find it interesting will get into a global debate. And third, once the debating part is over and either there is a consensus or there are a few alternatives, then comes the point of implementation. That is where a global freedom group will be necessary. And this will need political power, resources, the fire of ideology, the fire of spirituality, and so on. And this group will then have to contest all the forces of singularism, forces of vested interest, forces of wokeism, forces of communism, the jihadi forces, and the elite entrenched across countries. So it's going to be a very difficult uphill struggle because we are fighting with very difficult forces and very powerful forces who would not like this kind of a contest of vision to come about and disturb either their vision or their self-interest. So our philosophy being against them who are global, it will require a global action group and global action against the global adversaries. So this is how I see it taking off.
So where does India figure in this?
At the center of it, both conceptually and in action, provided we have the courage and the readiness to sacrifice. Unfortunately, for the last many centuries, almost 1,000 years, we have been extremely corrupt society, and we have been cowards, and we have been slaves of convenience and courage, convenience and comfort.
Pleasures.
Yeah, pleasures. So it is a golden opportunity for India to be at the center, provided we have the courage of taking the intellectual, philosophical leadership and sacrificing for the process. You cannot not sacrifice and be a leader. That is not possible. So we don't know whether society is ready for it or not. But if it is, India can be the leader and be at its center. Everything is rightly in place, provided we have courage to take on a civilizational mission.
So hopefully it can be done. A revolutionary episode, I dare say. See you all again. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Namaste.